Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Tuesday, February 10th. Derek VanRiper here with Eno Sarris with the final piece of our 2026 position preview series. It is part 4 of our starting pitcher preview. We're going to focus on pitchers going outside the top 250 overall in early NFBC drafts, as we say for all these episodes. Draft position very much subject to change because now pitchers and catchers are reporting to spring training. We have some teams beginning their first workouts on Tuesday, so we're going to get updates, we're going to get injury news, all sorts of things are going to start shaking up the board each and every day, so timing is critical as you get ready for your upcoming drafts. And some great news that we announced on Monday's show that I will repeat to begin today's episode. We have a listener league open for signups through the NFBC. We are launching a 2026 Fantasy Baseball League. It's free to enter, no purchase required. It will run for the full MLB regular season. It's a skill-based contest using standard NFBC scoring. It's a 5x5 league. The top 3 overall finishers are going to receive large merch vouchers for the official Rates and Barrels merch store. You must be 18 or older and otherwise eligible under NFBC rules. Void where prohibited. Full rules are linked in the show notes. So it's an NFBC 50 style league. That means 12 teams, 50 round slow draft. We're going to fill multiple 12-team leagues. So if you're hearing this and wondering, is the league full? The answer is no. Just sign up. You can use the link in the show description. We'll get as many of these going as we can. The drafts will all begin in a slow draft format on Monday, February 16th at 1 o'clock Eastern. So we got all of this week to fill those drafts up. Thanks to Greg Ambrosius, Tom Kesenick, Jeff Stein, and a team over at the NFBC for putting those leagues together for us.
One wrinkle that, if you've never played NFC, that is interesting that you may want to think about if you've been put in the league. Our league is already set. I've got a 12-person league and we're ready to go. But they have over at NFC what's called Kentucky Derby style.
That's it.
That's
Kentucky Derby
style. But you can basically, if you look at the front page of your league, you'll see that there are all the selections 1 through 12. You can basically say which slot you want, where you want to pick. So you can look at ADP, you can look at the process of, what people in the past have done. And you say, oh, if I pick 10, I get Ellie and this guy. And if I pick, 2, I get this and this. So you can kind of game out at least, I would say you can game out maybe 3-4 rounds before it starts to get beyond what it really happens in most leagues. And so you can decide how you want to start your league. And then what they do is they do a randomizer and you get like the 4th pick, but it goes through your preferences. And so you could theoretically, if nobody wanted the 1st pick, you could get the 1st pick with the 5th pick, if that makes any sense. But that won't happen. Most people are still putting 1 and 2 at the top of their queues, but it does get a little bit interesting after that. And you could, if you game things right, get your 3rd or 4th selection, even though you got a later pick in the draft.
Yep, definitely a good way to go about it. Look at the combinations of players that are usually available from each pick slot and sort of adjust your preferences from there. You may have also heard me say Rates and Barrels, a merch store. It's not open for business yet. It will be open for business by the time the season is over, hopefully much sooner than that. But once we have a timetable and once that's actually open for everyone to just buy any merch they want, we will, of course, make an announcement here and in our Discord. And if you haven't done so already, join the Discord. The link for that is also in the show description. Lots of lively conversation in there. It's a great way to keep up on the news. We'll get to some more news on our Wednesday episode. We got Jed Lowry joining us again. And that news will include Spencer Schwellenbach starting the year on the 60-day IL, which is not good for the teams I have drafted so far, so I'm very upset about that. But hopefully, with some of the pitchers we're talking about on today's episode, we'll get to some possible replacements, some adjustments you can make if you, in fact, already drafted Spencer Schwellenbach on a team in a league that has some in-season pickups. So, all of that preambling now aside, let's get back to where we were as we get into the 4th part of our starting pitcher preview. We left off at Shane Smith, right around pick 250. We pick it back up with Joey Cantillo, who was the biggest Stuff Plus riser on the update. He was the biggest riser. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, lefties got a little bit of a boost, and we've been trying to figure out why lefties are outproducing models. There's a great Stephen Nesbitt story about that on The Athletic. I think it has to do with relative rarity. Maybe there's a pitch design aspect. I don't know exactly what it is, but lefties have been outproducing what we expect of them. And Joey Cantillo, the armadillo, is how I'm going to remember it, is a beneficiary of that generally. I don't know if there's more going on though, because his curve has always done well, and now Stuff Plus likes it, and I didn't like it before. And the change, which has always done well and was above average by Stuff Plus before, is now well above average, and I think that actually just fits who he is. I will say that it's not easy for me to put him on. I will take him over like a Shane Smith, but it's not easy for me to put him on my sleeper list, as for a couple reasons. One is he's on a lot of sleeper lists, and so I don't know how sleeper he is anymore. And the second is there are some other factors here that are not good. Like he's had pretty bad injury history. He has bad velocity. He has bad command, and the fastball is not very good. So he's kind of like a wide arsenal, good secondary, bad command, bad fastball, bad injury history guys. So, it doesn't fit. Like if you want to like Noah Cameron, for example, and I think we'll talk about him in a second, Noah Cameron does a lot of these things where he has two good secondaries, doesn't have a great fastball. He has good command. He doesn't really have an injury history. So I don't know. There's some secondary factors here that keep me from necessarily always putting down the money that people are asking for this one.
Yeah, I think I like Cantillo a little bit more than you do, but there's a lot of similar pitchers that go in this range. I think he's got a teammate that might be vying for his rotation spot too, in Parker Messick, who I like on a similar sort of level. Messick
has better velo, better command, better injury history.
Yeah, Messick is just built like a tank. You just look at that guy and think he's going to be fine. Not that Cantillo's small. I think he's 6'4", 225, but I'm surprised Cantillo doesn't throw harder, I guess, is the one thing that I look at with him. The results have been good at a lot of different stops. I think the command is okay, though. I think it's just a question of maybe finding a way to continue to keep everybody off balance with those secondaries. The Guardians see what they do that well. Are we at the home streamer label, though, with Joey Cantillo? Like, are you really using him in difficult road spots if you have him on a deep roster?
I mean, we're in that general place in the drafts. I mean, that's where we are. So I think what's actually interesting is that I think that if you like him, then you like him beyond that. I'd say it's more like a 75%er.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what you're looking for as far as what stands out. Someone you're going to use for more than that home streaming sort of capacity. Ryne Nelson goes in this range. I mean, it's a lot of fastballs. He still throws the four-seamer 60% of the time or more against lefties and righties. More sliders and curves, fewer changeups last year, but nothing in the pitch mix really stood out to me as explaining the difference between his ratios in 2024 and the really good numbers he put up last year. It was a 3.39 ERA and a 107 whip coming off of a 4.24 and a 1.25. I think the projections are saying split the difference and maybe hew more towards 2024, especially in the whip column in particular. And I have a hard time arguing against the projections in this case.
Yeah, skill independent ERA Sierra is what it functions very well. It does very well. And I think it's because it's basically a little projection system, inside an ERA. And it does a lot of the things that projection systems do when it's looking at which skills are more valuable. It's skill interactive. It looks at ground ball rate. It looks at, different things, aspects to create this. And for the last 2 years, he's been the exact same guy by Sierra. 4.08 and 4.07 Sierra over the last 2 seasons. So despite a 4.24 ERA and a 3.39 ERA, I'm going with Sierra. I think he's just a kind of a league average guy, and we're going to get a lot of that. I don't want to say it too often because there's a lot of league average guys in here. The thing that kind of separates him in a bad way from other league average guys is, I'm going to say this about other guys where I'm like, he's a league average guy, but at home, he's a beast or whatever. Like, I don't know when to start Ryne Nelson. Home is okay, but he's not home in Texas, I don't know that there's a place where I'm like, oh yeah. So, and like also home for him is going to mean a fair amount of starts against the Dodgers and stuff. And for his career, he does have a 4.64 ERA at home and 3.77 away. I don't know what to do with that because last year was a 2 ERA at home. So I don't see a split that looks stable, where I'm like, okay, that's what I'll do. And I don't really want to start him against the Dodgers. And
yeah, Nelson's sort of an easy pass for me in this cluster because I think you can talk yourself into a few other guys we're going to get to here in the next few minutes that bring a little bit more to the table as far as either new pitches, maybe some secondaries that generate whiffs, less concern against lefties, whatever it might be that you're looking for. I think you'll find it somewhere else. Quinn Priester goes in this range too. He added a cutter last year with the Brewers, tightened up his slider a little bit, ditched his changeup, all part of the overhaul. We didn't see a massive strikeout rate, but he looks like a functional back-end starter to me. It was a 55% ground ball rate, puts him in the 93rd percentile. What do you think the encore looks like? I mean, I think he's usable. I just don't know if there's a lot of ceiling here that he's still trying to unlock.
Yeah, I think maybe he's just the BABIP progresses a little bit. Some of the sort of the standard numbers that people look at, I think, will go the other direction. Like he had a 79% strand rate last year. It's 70%, across baseball, and 73% for him. So that'll go the wrong way. He had a 284 batting average in balls in play. It's 289 for him for career. So maybe, cutters do suppress balls in play. That is something that's been found. But sinkers don't. And he is kind of primarily a sinker guy. So I would expect the BABIP and the strand rate to go up. I would expect a lot of the peripherals to stay the same, which means he's not going to help you really in strikeout rate. And I think the ERA is going to get worse. And the whip is not a strength of his. So I don't know. I think he's a streamer for me. He was better away from home last year. Could that continue? I mean, is that a function of the parks that he plays in other than his own in the division, or is that just a weird artifact? He was better in the second half, but I don't know. I think it'll be near 4 ERA. I think he'll be a streamer in most 15-team leagues, which means that, he is usable in drafting holds because he'll be usable innings. But again, like Nelson, what's the rubric? What's the I will start Quinn Priester all the time in X situation?
I still think it's probably more home. I think the benefits of pitching at home are pretty well documented in general, right? And I think in Milwaukee, it is a controlled environment where the roof is usually closed, especially early in the season. So even if the splits didn't, lean on that last year, I think that's probably where they're going to go. I'm with you on the fours, like the low fours, high threes sort of ERA, kind of 1.25-ish whip. I think it's a similar usage pattern, mostly at home and in easier matchups. Very common for this sort of group. But if I'm missing something about him, it's that, it's something we haven't seen yet, at least as far as the ability to rack up more Ks. I know he had that one really big strikeout performance against the Dodgers mid-season that made us wonder, hey, is there actually a lot more here than we expected? But I don't know. I don't think we're there yet.
I'm looking at 10 strikeouts against the Dodgers, 11 against the Rockies, 10 against the Angels.
Mm-hmm.
Other than the Dodgers, I'd say those are not great teams that he took advantage of. I'm looking at the big blow-ups. One was the Cubs at home. One was St. Louis on the road. One was the Mets at home. One was at Miami. So I don't think you're going to be able to avoid blow-ups completely, because I probably would start him at Miami and at St. Louis. But I think you brought maybe a 60% starter where maybe you don't start him against the Cubs at home, but you do, maybe you don't start him against the Cubs and Mets and those types of teams at home, but you do start him most of the time at home. And then he's going to have some road starts at Pittsburgh, and, he's going to have some usable road starts so I'm going to say about a 60% starter for me.
Yeah, which is, again, probably is normal for most of this tier. Logan Henderson also goes in this same range. He was deemed healthy after a season-ending flexor strain. It cut his season short in August. It's a heavy fastball changeup combo. Throws some cutters against lefties and gets really good results for a guy that doesn't have great velocity. So I'm curious what you make of Henderson. I mean, this is going to be a kind of an interesting few weeks for him. If he's healthy, he's absolutely in the mix for a rotation spot, and he's one of those guys that continues to exceed expectations.
I mean, stat-based minor league scouting really loves Logan Henderson. The eyes scouts didn't love him as much. They had him as a 50 future value guy with a 55 fastball, 70 changeup, and 55 command. So kind of a small arsenal. But I will say that the revision likes him better. So Logan Henderson was up to a 101 stuff plus overall, and the changeup, slider, and four seam were all above average, or at least the slider was above 100, so slightly below average for a slider, but all usable pitches, and the changeup was plus finally in the model, and so I actually like Logan Henderson here. This is the first name. I guess Joey Cantillo counts too, but this is a name where he's going to go up, I think, as the season approaches, as his lock on the job solidifies, and as we move away from draft and holds where you don't want to take a guy where you're not sure about the role, you're not sure about the outcomes, you're taking higher floor guys. As we move to higher ceiling guys, I think he'll go up. I would love to take Logan Henderson as one of my last pitchers in a 15-team league. I think he's even worth it as a 12-team shot, if he's your last pitcher.
Yeah, I think it'll help in having the ability to cut players, like in the sense of just feeling comfortable with, okay, I got him for a couple starts, I'm streaming him. He's out of the rotation right now because they sent him down, whatever. You just get some clarity, you move on with the roster spot as opposed to having to wait it out for 6 or 8 weeks if things don't break your way in a draft and hold.
100%.
Yeah, you look at that rotation right now, Woodruff, Priester, Mizorowski, Henderson, Patrick, probably the top 5, but Robert Gasser's there, Brandon Sproat, Kyle Harrison, who they just traded for. So
I mean, those three that you just mentioned are young, interesting pitchers. I don't really understand the Caleb Durbin trade myself because I don't really like Kyle Harrison, and I wouldn't trade a league average third baseman for Kyle Harrison and even another pitching prospect. So I don't really get it. So they must like something about Kyle Harrison is what I'm thinking. And so if they like something about Kyle Harrison, they got some sort of tweak for him. We're like, oh, here, try this. And he pitches really well in the spring. Well, they also like Sproat. They got him. And then Gasser's coming off of injury and they liked him. They got him at one point. So all three of those guys could just, make room for themselves in the spring.
Tons of lefties in that bullpen right now, too. So still some work to be done sorting out what's going to happen in Milwaukee with that pitching. But I do think Henderson's pretty intriguing where he's been going. And I'm with you, I think there's a chance he starts moving up once he shows he's healthy this spring. Mike Burrows goes in this range, a guy that ends up with an opportunity in Houston. He was expendable for the Pirates given their pitching depth, and we know there's an opportunity in Houston, and a 6-man rotation opens up an extra spot, so Burrows should pretty safely be in the mix to begin the year and have a pretty long window to prove himself for the Astros this year. Does he sort of rise above any of the guys we've talked about so far?
He's really interesting because I think, he's kind of a combo of both oatmeal and upside, which is, we don't have really a word for this one, but if you look at his pitch chart that's up here right now with the revision numbers, you can see there's a clear problem, which is that the four seam's not great, but he locates it well enough. And, he's got a really good changeup and a pretty good slider. So you can see that he has representative pitches, right? Like he has 4 pitches. He has them. How good are they, right? And so 4-pitch guy that probably has a rotation spot. They went and got him. That last year was above average by K-BB. Had a 3.87 Sierra. Overall, the stuff plus is all right. Has 5 pitches. Here's what I'd be very interested in hearing that I think might change my opinion of him a little bit. Is Mike Burrows going to throw a sinker in the spring? And the reason I think that matters is if you don't have a good fastball, throw more than one. And he hasn't applied that trigger yet, at least not in the major leagues. And so I wonder if just giving him another pitch and, having 6 pitches, if he could sort of out quantity his lack of quality when it comes to out pitches. But in any case, he's already sort of shown that he can put these pitches together to decent effect. So all the projections are around a 4 ERA, and I think he's going to be usable. I'm not sure that right now I can tell you he'll be a great start at home or a great start on the road, but there's going to be times when he has bad opponents, and that's an easy one to use. And then he has a little bit of upside in, like, what if he added a sinker or cutter or something? So I'm going to say he's like sort of decent oatmeal.
Yeah, it's interesting, too. He's going ahead of Christian Javier, who just didn't look like the same guy coming off Tommy John last year. He's ahead of Spencer Arrighetti in terms of how the market's treating him right now. So definitely has some draft season buzz after that trade to Houston. And Noah Cameron, who I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, pops in this range, has at least 4 pitches he throws to hitters on both sides. He's got 4-seamers and cutters for everyone, curves and sliders to lefties, changeups, curves, and sliders that he throws to righties. It's a 58-degree arm angle. Projections all say the sub-3 ERA from last year is not sticking around. You're not going to find an ERA projected below 4. You're going to even see some 4.5s, I think, out there, depending on the systems you're looking at. Had some good fortune with strand rate last year. That obviously helped him a season ago. We know they're making changes to the outfield walls in Kansas City. That would probably work against Cameron a little bit as well. So what do you think year 2 is going to bring for a guy that proved to really be helpful for us in deeper leagues last year as a rookie?
I mean, I'm skeptical that someone with that low of a fastball velocity will continue to be as effective as he was. Noah Cameron is out there throwing 92. The average fastball, I guess, from a lefty is a little bit lower than a righty, but the average fastball for a righty starter was over 94 last year. So he's lacking there, but in the model refresh, he does have the changeup, slider, and curve are all above average pitches. And the cutter and fastball are not above average by stuff, but he locates them well. He actually locates all of his pitches really well. It's not my type of pitcher. You can see Oopsie gives him a 4.66 ERA going forward. That's my bias, is towards that sort of deal. He had a 20% strikeout rate in the major leagues last year. 23% was, or 22.5% was the league average. He's projected by everybody to be 19 and 20%. So I just don't. And then some of these might be old park factors that are going in. How many of these projection systems are able to project the impact of the new park?
And they're still pretty harsh in terms of the regression that's baked in, even without adjusting to make that a more hitter-friendly environment. So I do think Noah Cameron, for being a guy that was, I think, a top 35 pitcher in the player rater last year, is actually available at something of a discount. If you're a believer, well, good news. A lot of people aren't right now because I think in part because the K rate's so low, right? That's what kind of kept him from breaking through in some of the more shallow leagues out there, despite the good ratios.
The inspiration for Lodum, model spelled backwards incorrectly, is not just that, like, there's no model likes him. There has to be something you like about him, right? So
it's command. It's the command and the number of pitches, right? I mean, it seems like he's got an advanced feel for game planning and how he wants to attack hitters.
I could see myself even taking a share of Cameron, but if Cameron's available here before we drafted, before the most recent news came down, I would have taken Troy Melton. And, because Troy Melton is a righty with 3 fastball, 2 breaking balls, great velo, a splitter. The model likes him. He has a great home park. Now, maybe I'd rather take Cameron, because... but then there's also, there's another name here that's coming up soon. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't end up with Cameron even now. I'm just explaining. I would have taken Melton before, and if the Melton's not there, I'll take Braxton Ashcraft, who I love, who's like a righty with a great new sinker, and there are other names I like better.
There's a couple Tigers that go here. Casey Mize and Troy Melton both kind of lumped together. There's actually a lot of Mets that go in this range too. Sean Manaea goes around here. Guys that are in pitcher-friendly situations in general. Let's start with Mize. I mean, I think we saw the best version of him that we've seen in the big leagues so far. Didn't have absurd home-road splits, which maybe he'll do a little better at home in the future just because it's very pitcher-friendly, especially in the early part of the year. But the overall adjustment, I think, was the slight increase of his splitter usage, which we've been calling for a long time. You reduced the slider to get there. And the increased usage of a slurve that actually got a lot of whiffs for him last year. So what other adjustments do you think are left for Casey Mize, or do you think we're at the point now where a 22-ish% K rate is sort of like the best version of Mize we can get based on everything he's put out there over parts of a few seasons now in Detroit?
Yeah, I think he's pushed everything about as far as it can go. I mean, I'm just looking at the new model numbers, and they're just, he has basically 4 league average pitches. And maybe the splitters in certain situations plays above, and the slurve too. If you're in a 2-strike count, he can finish you off with those pitches. So he has pitches that you can get ahead with. There's no glaring lack of command. He's got a great home park. I think he's actually a high floor, guy that you'll use at least 50% of the time. I think you just settled into that.
Yeah, and I think the way the Tigers' rotation is starting to come together, the addition of Framber Valdez, at first it seemed like really bad news for Melton, but with the follow-up news that Reese Olson's shoulder still, after this winter, is still not right, probably leaves a spot open to begin the year. So behind the likes of Skubal, Valdez, Flaherty, and Mize, you have a spot for Melton or Drew Anderson to begin the season. And I was reading Cody Stavenhagen's piece about that. In Cody's piece, he points out Drew Anderson signed for $7 million. So maybe they want to give Drew Anderson a look as a starter before possibly turning that spot over to Melton. But Melton's path is actually not that bad.
It's not that bad. And while, Cody Ponce, who, it's hard to not talk about these players without talking about the options. You know what I mean? Cody Ponce is later on the rundown, but why don't I just break him down real quick? Because, Cody Ponce added 2 ticks of velocity and a kick change. Now he has a kick change and a split. I think maybe kick change and a splitter, but he has a functional changeup and 2 ticks of velocity he didn't have when he left. Drew Anderson doesn't really have that. He's basically the same guy that when he left. And my contact at the KBO said that Drew Anderson looks like a reliever to him, that he thinks when Drew Anderson comes back to MLB, he'll be a reliever. So I still think Troy Melton is interesting. However, this does reduce the amount of innings that I put down for Melton. It does reduce my ranking for him because Olson could still make it. It's just the first update that we got. And so I have Olson down for 110 innings, Melton for 105, and Drew Anderson for 75. That's how I think it'll break down. And so that does hurt Melton as a prospect, but maybe that makes him more gettable in fantasy, in dynasty situations. Maybe that drops his price enough. I'm a little surprised to see somebody like Sean Manaea in here, but Sean Manaea, the deal is injury. I mean, I think he's never really developed a secondary that's great. But with the new slot, the fastball, the sweeper, I think he's a fairly projectable pitcher that you use 50% of the time at least at home. And the big question is just how many innings you're going to get. So I think Mize over Manaea for sure. I think most of these guys that we're talking about over Melton for now with the news. But I'll take Cody Ponce over Drew Anderson. I'll take Cody Ponce over Melton maybe with the news. But my favorite really is Braxton Ashcraft, because we're talking about this type of player here right now, right? Where, you want to have a use case. What's your use case with Braxton Ashcraft? At the very least, I'm going to start him at home, right? And what is the upside with him? Well, he actually has great upside because he added a sinker. He has a really good breaking ball. He now has 2 fastballs, an elite breaking ball, and a secondary breaking ball. So I think he has a full arsenal. The command looks fine. The big question is, he had surgery on his left non-throwing shoulder. He had a torn meniscus. He had TJ where he missed one of the 3rd seasons. And he's got reoccurring forearm tightness in 24 that limited him to 73 innings. So there is an innings question here. And relevant to all this, we have breaking news. Breaking Justin Verlander to the Tigers murders my Troy Melton upside, dude. Just absolutely drops on it. Just from the top rope, Justin Verlander to the Tigers. I think that it's possible that you could just maybe replace Melton here in this tier with Justin Verlander. Start him at home. Maybe he's worse because he doesn't have the same upside.
Okay, this is hitting in little waves here. Okay, so the first thing I think is this is very bad news for Reese Olson, right? Which we already were worried about him. Verlander had such a weird start to the year last year where I finally started to give up on him. And then it seemed like late in the year, he put some things back together again. You look at late August to the end of September, 45 and 2/3 innings, 42 Ks, 296 ERA, 123 whip. I think you are setting expectations for a guy like Verlander that are comparable to a lot of pitchers that go in this range. I don't know if I would take him ahead of... Man, Manaea's health is tough to reckon with. Like, if we knew Manaea's healthy, I'd probably rather have Manaea. 75-12 strikeout to walk last year and 60 and 2/3 from Manaea. Just had a home run problem. But it was a loose body in his arm, and he didn't have surgery for it. And we just saw something similar happen to Spencer Schwellenbach, where the problem that wasn't taken care of was still a problem. The key difference is Manaea was pitching at the end of last year, and Spencer Schwellenbach wasn't. So I do think you have to account for the timeline of what we've seen since these injuries have been reported and kind of factor that into your built-in expectations of how this year is going to begin. I'm with you on Ashcraft. I do think you're looking at like 150 innings this year, sort of a higher end outcome, maybe 160, because he got to 118 last year, but they're going to be somewhat careful with him, and they've got good depth, and eventually they got Jared Jones coming back too, so they'll have one more guy that is important to them that they're also managing carefully once he completes his rehab from Tommy John surgery. But Verlander, to me, probably is like a tier below the guys we're talking about right now, even though he's impacting guys in this group. I do think Verlander's arrival is the kind of thing that either bumps Melton into a multi-inning relief role or keeps him stretched out at AAA until someone breaks down and needs to be replaced in that rotation.
Yeah. Among the veterans, over Verlander, I'd take Manaea and Mize pretty quickly. Among the kids, Cantillo, Logan, Henderson, Braxton, Ashcraft are my favorites. So Verlander doesn't bump anybody off of those lists. I just thought that he might, come into this tier at some point because we have, we have a Gerrit Cole in this tier, where you just, you don't know how many innings you're going to get. And you do have some veterans that show up in this list, like a Brady Singer's down there, and Kodai Senga is on this in this tier, in terms of ADP. Verlander doesn't beat anything out for me though.
No, there's still a pretty clear gap though there, even though I think he will move up a little bit off his ADP now that we know he has a team for 2026. Nice story, seeing him going back to Detroit for what could be his final big league campaign. You mentioned Cole before. He had Tommy John with internal brace last March. No setback so far in his rehab. If you assume a 14-month recovery, you're looking more like late May, early June for that return. So a lot of the leagues we talk about have no IL spots, so nursing him through a couple of months is challenging. And then there's always the is he the same guy question right away coming off of surgery. With Cole, you're talking about a previous top-end elite sort of starter, so even if he has lost something, he's probably pretty usable in a lot of leagues. So what's your overall approach with Gerrit Cole right now in IL leagues versus non-IL leagues specifically?
I think that he represents why you try to keep your injury risk low early on. I think it's hard to throw him on a team where you already took, Snell or Glasnow, or, if you took some risk early on in this tier, you're like, man, I just really need innings. I need to make sure I get innings. And so you're going to take somebody more boring than him probably to make sure you get innings, because there can always be setbacks. There are revisions, Jose Soriano's in this tier. He had a Tommy John, then he had a revision. so that those things happen. I know that he was such a workhorse before that I think he'll come back and be fine. But then there's also, Sandy Alcantara was a workhorse that came back and stuff-wise was fine, but just didn't have command of his breaking balls. If Gerrit Cole doesn't have command of his breaking balls, he's not going to be vintage. So is that double risk that I talk about in terms of, what will happen on the field plus the injury risk that generally keeps me away from him. But in an IL league, I would love to stash him if it comes down to it. Like if you're coming to the end of your draft and it's Cody Ponce or Gerrit Cole in a 12-team league and you got an IL slot, take Gerrit Cole, put him on the IL slot, and then wait a couple of weeks for spring to produce a sleeper as good as Cody Ponce. Like somebody else will jump up and you'll be able to take him because you have that extra roster spot now. So that's my favorite use case for Gerrit Cole is, 12-team league with IL slots. Put him on there, stash him.
I think that makes a lot of sense. If you're trying to find the innings that you were mentioning before, someone like Bailey Ober is actually kind of interesting to me. There's been a few stories about how he was pitching hurt last year. His hip was a problem, tried to pitch through it. I think that helps you understand how that strikeout rate fell off so quickly. We've known that with the lack of premium velocity, especially, Bailey Ober is going to have a home run problem. It's been baked in for his entire career, and it just got worse when he was trying to pitch through it last year. But I think he's a really good late whip play. Like, it's hard to find excellent whip over 140-ish innings, which I think is a totally reasonable expectation for him. It might come with an ERA that's a little bit worse than you'd expect, but generally, for a guy that has a profile that I didn't like when it was 150 picks more expensive last year, I think Bailey Ober is actually affordable and a nice bargain, kind of filler sort of arm in this bracket.
It's a tough place to get innings because, as you see, the next few names, Ryan Weathers, Grayson Rodriguez, Zebby Matthews, Cade Cavalli, there's a lot of injury history going on here or lack of, previous innings in Major League Baseball. I'm going to jump down to Chad Patrick for innings, though, over Bailey Ober. Chad Patrick, 2023, 124 innings in the minors, 2024, 136 in the minors. And then last year, he actually threw 42 innings in the minors. So you look at the 119, it's not 119, it's 160. And so, I think he can throw as many innings as they want. And I think, given the other guys around him in the rotation, I know there's some question if he's fully in the rotation or not, but for me, he's actually kind of represents maybe the workhorse of the rotation. Maybe he just is the guy who's in the rotation all year because he's the guy who has the most innings. Maybe it's not the most exciting production because, you put this on the rundown. I mean, the three fastball usage thing is kind of weird, but, Brandon Woodruff did the 3 fastball thing kind of last year, and he did it to great effect. So it is something that the Brewers like to do, where the cutter, I think, it becomes a hybrid. It is both a fastball and a breaking ball. And so I think for Chad Patrick, I think he's shown enough for me. There's a little bit of that velo jump that makes me a little bit nervous, honestly, from a health perspective. So maybe you just lose him like all pitchers can be lost. But in terms of demonstrated bulk, he has it. And he seems to be at a point in his career where I think the Brewers are just going to set it and forget it to a certain extent.
Yeah, 11 strikeouts, just 1 walk in 9 innings during the postseason over 6 appearances as well. Really kind of thrived in that bullpen role. But maybe he is part of the get him there sort of starters that they need for the volume perspective. And I think given those past workloads, no real reason to think they would have to hold him back at all if his arm feels good coming off that workload bump a season ago. Kind of sandwiched in between some of the guys we're talking about. Ryan Weathers, I think, is interesting just because he's already made some adjustments, and it's just a matter of staying healthy. And to begin the year, and even as they get Cole and Rodon back, I think they prefer Ryan Weathers to guys like Luis Gil and Will Warren. So if push comes to shove and they get everybody healthy, which is a huge if for that Yankees rotation, I still think Weathers has a spot in the back of that group, and some of the guys we've seen in past years would be the ones that get bumped out.
I just want to highlight real quick how impressive the changes have been that Ryan Weathers has put together since 2021 when he first got into the big leagues. He came into the big leagues with a low arm angle, 33-degree arm angle, and a fastball and sinker combo where the fastball and sinker were the same pitch and were completely predictable given his arm slot. and he's changed a lot since then. I mean, not only that, he was 93.9 on the four seam last in 2021. In 2025, he was 96.9. His arm angle was up to 42 degrees. His fastball and sinker are completely different pitches. If you look at the changeup, it has added like 12 inches of drop since 2021. And then if you look at the breaking ball, he still throws some of the gyro sliders, but he's added a sweeper. And so the pitch chart couldn't look more different than it used to. It used to be really boring where it was the fastballs, changeups, sinkers all had the same movement, and then he had a gyro slider, and that's it. Now he has a big spread, and I think that we haven't been able to really nail that down. There is some research from Driveline that suggests that the distance between your pitches on those charts is meaningful to how well you do as a pitcher. And you just can see from this chart that's up right now that the distance between his pitches is much greater now in terms of just geometrical distance. And so I like him in every way. The one thing is that part of how he's gotten his velo up is throwing closer to his max. So I think he's a big honking injury risk.
Yep, it's built in. It's known from all the lost time, but I think he's had some finger issues on top of arm stuff, so it's not all elbow and shoulder. I'm just intrigued because I think he's on a better team. It's a more difficult park, but this could be a bit of a undervalued profile at this price point. Whereas a lot of other guys, they have the injury issues and they have some role questions. I don't think Weathers has role questions at all, so I think that's going to make him appealing at least to the early part of the season for me.
You're right.
A massive increase.
Grayson Rodriguez goes right by him. I don't know that we need to do that much more analysis of him. It's the same as ever as, great stuff, no health. He just missed all of last year. So I guess if Ryan Weathers has a D, then Grayson Rodriguez has an F. But at least where Ryan Weathers is a 5 on a team that has like 3 guys coming back from injury. And so he might end up being the power lefty in that bullpen too. Grayson Rodriguez, I think the Angels are like, this guy needs to be a starter for us to win that trade, to go anywhere. This guy needs to be a starter. So I think there's fewer role issues with Grayson Rodriguez actually than Ryan Weathers, but he gets an F on the health. Then you have Zebby Matthews who's kind of in between both of them, where I guess you could say there's role issues, but this is also a team that needs starters. And, I think he's going to get every shot to be a starter. I guess there's some health issues, but it's definitely he's not like a F like any of the other guys. So for me, Zebby is the pick here. I like the Zebby of the 3. Zebby's wasn't, the revision, Stuff Plus revision wasn't so kind to him. He was down 5 points. He was a top 5 dropper in Stuff Plus, but he's still 101. He still has, a fastball slider combo that are above average, along with the sinker. And the cutter and curve did drop below average. And he has this really weird pitch chart. I just want to throw his pitch chart up on the screen real quick, because if you look at his pitch chart, he I don't know how to say it. He has a 40-degree arm angle, but none of his pitches follow that 40-degree arm angle and go, he doesn't have a curve. Everything is vertical. And they're I don't know how shouldn't he have more wiggle? I think he should try a sweeper. I'm looking at this. There's something missing from this pitch chart. The fastballs look okay. The changeup's all right. He has 3 distinct breaking balls in the cutter, the gyro slider, and the curve. But I think if he added a sweeper, he would add more dimensionality to this, more side-to-sideness. So I think there could actually be more work that could be done on this profile. I like 96 miles an hour with 3 breaking balls, so I'm gonna pick Zebby Matthews.
Yeah, I think it's easy to number scout him too at AAA and think there's nothing left to prove. He's had a lot of success, one rung away from the big leagues. There's so many pitches in the arsenal. He seems like he's got a feel for spin. There has to be a path for Zebby to find something else that moves, to that glove side, because you're right. It's very vertical, very north and south overall in that movement profile. Cade Cavalli goes in this range, and man, Cade Cavalli took a long road back to get into the Nats rotation last year. Did get to 113 and 2/3 innings, so probably another guy that's going to be in that 150 range if he stays healthy over the course of 2026. Looked better at the end of the year. Had a nice schedule, too. I saw the Marlins twice, Pirates, White Sox, and Mets in his last 5 starts. Pitched to a 3.38 ERA and a 1.38 whip. Maybe was finally starting to feel like himself again at the very end of the year. It's just interesting because he averaged 97.1 on the four-seamer. He has 3 fastballs, has a curveball, has a changeup. So it's a deep arsenal with some velo and plenty of runway, I think, in D.C. to show that he deserves the ball every 5th day.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big missing part here is command, not stuff. Anytime you look at the stuff metrics, they're way ahead of the command metrics, 94 location plus last year. And he really struggled to locate most of his pitches. But he's got another year removed from his surgery, so you'd expect maybe some of those command numbers to get better. And then he had a 101 location plus on the new sinker that he was throwing. That's why his ground ball rate was up. That's why I think his walk rate was manageable this past year. So I think both of those things, the more distance from the surgery and now a fastball that he actually commands an above average rate, make Cavalli more interesting to me. I think Cavalli might end up on a sleeper list for me. Him and Zebby are hard to choose between the two of them. These are 2 of the better names in this tier for me.
Yeah, I think when you look at Zebby's situation right now, Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, Bailey Ober clearly ahead of him, but Zebby's kind of in a 3-man competition, maybe a 4-man competition for the final 2 spots with Simeon Woods Richardson, Taj Bradley, and Mick Abel.
Yeah, and I think Mick Abel is pretty easy for them to send him down. And I personally don't like Simeon Woods Richardson that much, so I'd put Zebby ahead of him. But if I'm wrong, I think Taj Bradley might be out of options. Let me see here. Taj Bradley has 1 option left, so that would mean that all of those guys have options. So they may just decide we're going to take the best players north.
Yeah, I think Simeon Woods Richardson's the guy that doesn't have options left of that entire group. Everybody else does. Hey, Woods Richardson, he pitched well in the second half last year, man. You've always been a skeptic.
I have. But yeah, his velo was up a little bit. Strikeout rate was the best of his career for Simeon Woods Richardson, and he has no options. So it's going to be him and one of those other guys. He has a 4.62 for Woods Richardson, if you're wondering why. But, I think Parker Messick might be my favorite on this entire episode.
Really? Okay. Why do you think, why do you like him better than everybody else we've talked about so far?
Well, okay. Is he in the rotation?
He's, I think, maybe the number 6 starter right now because it depends how you think the Guardians are approaching Logan Allen. Threw a ton of innings for them last year. And it also depends on how they feel about Messick versus Cantillo, who is out of options. So
Cantillo's in. I mean, teams don't lose guys like Cantillo, and they're not going to move him to the pen. So Cantillo's in. Logan Allen has an option, and I don't think he's any good. So if you follow that line of reasoning, then you are into Parker Messick, who last year, had a above average strikeout rate, a teeny tiny walk rate that worked with his prospect command grades and fit his location plus. And then I think a wide enough arsenal that I can look past the 93 mile an hour velocity, which is not ideal, but it's not bad. It's not terrible. I would guess that for lefties, the average is around 93.5. So just slightly below average for velo with an above average change, above average curve, above average slider, very much the Joey Cantillo package with less baggage when it comes to command and injury. That's my case.
Yeah, okay. I'm into Parker Messick. It's been on my radar for a few years. I just think he may be on the outside looking in for things that are out of his control, depending on how the Guardians view Logan Allen compared to how you view Logan Allen. That's my only concern with Messick at this time, and lock and change between now and opening day on the health front for that group. Brady Singer goes in this range. The more you look at him, the more you start to think that 2023 season's actually the outlier. That was the year where the K rate dipped below 20%. ERA went north of 5. He's just fine. I mean, last year I think he was pitcher number 58 in the player rater, so useful in deeper leagues, but extremely oatmeal-y. I don't think there's any sort of extra level that Brady Singer's going to unlock at this point.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, that he is just so boring that I don't think I'm into it. Everything for his career and last year is just slightly better than league average, which is not exactly great in fantasy. The deeper your league, the more interesting Singer gets to me for sure. He does represent innings. Again, the use case here I think is slightly more away from home, just because Cincinnati's a little bit tougher spot. But I don't know if that actually has played out in his demonstrated home results. I'm looking at that really quickly. Last year, 488 away, 329 home. Yay. And then the year before that, 416 away, 330 home. Like, gosh, thanks for really nailing the park factor splits for me, Brady Singer. I still would be more careful with him at home. And that makes it harder for me because I want pitchers where I'm like, I can start him at home, because what you said earlier, there's the just generally pitchers do better at home. And if they also have a good home park, you're like, I'm putting them in the best position to succeed. Whereas if you take Singer and you're like, oh, he's generally better at home, but also his home is Cincinnati, I don't know. It's not my bag.
Yeah, I think you have to play it heavier early in the season and then be a little more careful when the weather warms up. All the things we've talked about with Andrew Abbott as far as the very conditional adjustments would apply to Singer, and I think it's even on finer margins. So that makes it more difficult for me to get behind. Robby Snelling goes in this range. I don't expect him to stay down here. I think the way the Marlins depth chart is shaping up, Snelling's the kind of guy that just needs to look fine this spring, and he's going to move up. He's going to be on sleeper lists. He's going to be in columns. He's going to be excited.
Did you miss the news?
What news? Chris Paddock?
Yeah.
That's not news. Come on. What are we doing here?
1 year, $4 million. I think that's interesting. You brought up the contract when it came to Drew Anderson. And I do think it's interesting to think about contracts. We talked about it with Mize. Sometimes the contract can be a signifier for what they think of the pitcher. 7 for Drew Anderson, I think, is right on the cusp of either reliever or starter. Maybe it's a bulk reliever. It's the kind of deal that Jake Junis used to get, so like it doesn't have to be a starter that's in the rotation. Could be like a depth starter that you keep on the roster. I haven't seen Verlander's number yet, but I'm guessing it's 10 or 11. 10, 11, 12 is to somebody that's a starter. You put him in the rotation. And 4 could be anything. And 4 doesn't mean he's keeping Robby Snelling out of the rotation if Robby Snelling looks great in the spring. And Snelling's, made some real advancements with changing some of the shapes of his pitches, adding velo. He has really gotten better in the model numbers as he's advanced, and he looks like a way better of a pitcher than the pitcher that the Padres sold. Also, on top of this, you have Braxton Gerrit, who has had a real hard time staying healthy. Max Meyer has had a real hard time staying healthy, various ailments. So there's somebody that could get hurt. I guess I'm a little worried by Jansen Junk, because Junk just has great command. He's not a high ceiling guy, but the way these Marlins are run, they could say, are we sure that Snelling is going to, compete for the Cy Young? I mean, not for the Cy Young, for the Rookie of the Year. And if he's not going to compete for the Rookie of the Year, then the smart, quote unquote, air quotes, smart thing to do is to keep him down and keep another year of control. So he's not going to, I think, if you ask me, he's not going to break camp with the team. And so can you hold him until May, June? That's what you got to ask yourself when you're taking Robby Snelling, I think.
So you think we could get Bubba Chandlered again on this one?
Yes, I do. And I think it's even possible on the next one. Ian Seymour pitched in the major leagues last year, and you thought he had a job, and you thought, this is a fun lefty with command, and he had a 26% strike rate despite a 91-mile-an-hour fastball. Is he in the Cameron Messick group? Are we super excited? And then they went and spent $13 million on Nick Martinez. Not to mention, how much did they spend on Mats? I forget. but he's going to get 2 years and $15 million. And Matz's going to get every chance to win a rotation spot. And Nick Martinez, if you give him $13 million as the raise, I think you're giving him a rotation spot. So you just push Joe Boyle, who I love. I love this man who cannot find the strike zone. And Ian Seymour, I'm sure you love this man who throws 91 miles an hour and can find the strike zone.
Yeah, I seem to like these guys more than you do. Like I think I can tell myself a story that they've got enough of a plan that they can survive, especially when they're in a pitcher-friendly environment.
Oh, and I can tell the story for Joe Boyle. Oh, he just one target, and he's got 97, new arm slot. Come on, baby. It's going to find the command.
Yeah, I was looking at Seymour, and I'm like, is this another Jeffrey Springs situation? Is this Jeffrey Springs with a deeper arsenal even? Like, that could work. They've made this work before. I mean, it's four-seamer change. He's got the sweeper. He throws a cutter against righties. I think at the end of the year when they were just letting him go, like 80-plus pitches most of his outings, it was a 3.48 ERA and a 1.19 whip over his last 7 appearances, 38-11 strikeout to walk. Like, these are good things. Like, I think Ian Seymour is a very good pitcher. I just think they've got a very complicated depth chart, as they often do in Tampa Bay. So is he better in draft and hold because he'll have a role, and like trying to time it and cut him and pick him back up in leagues with moves is actually going to be kind of a pain?
Yeah, and Boyle and Seymour both have options. And if there is a team that plays that game with veterans and options more than the Rays, I don't know who it is. So if you're looking through the Rays depth chart, Jake Fraley is going to start, I think, and Nick Martinez and Steven Matz are going to start, and Joe Boyle and Ian Seymour are going to the minor leagues.
Yeah, Nick Martinez being added to the mix there makes it even more complicated, though. So a lot of arms stacking up in Tampa Bay. Kodai Senga goes in this range. We saw the late season reset at AAA last year. I mean, man, it was a weird year. What are you doing with Kodai Senga? The name just alone makes him seem like a relative discount at this point, because we've seen what he can do in 2023, a sub-3 ERA, 122 whip, and 202 Ks. It's not that long ago, right? If he gets that splitter working again, like, he's probably going to have some kind of bounce back this year. But I guess the question is, bounce back to what?
What I don't like is how the season ended, where he's like in the minors and can't make the roster and can't come up and just looks completely lost. And I don't like that, combined with the effort that the Mets have put into this rotation in adding Freddie Peralta. And I still like Clay Holmes. We'll get to him. Nolan McLean has laid claim to a spot in the rotation. David Peterson is boring, and we'll get to him in a second. But all these guys seem like solid, rotation guys if they're healthy. And I like Senga. So maybe they'll go to a 6-man, preserve Peralta's innings for the postseason. Put Senga on on a Japanese schedule. It's not like Sean Manaea is a picture of health. Maybe preserve some McLean innings. I don't know. I think you go to a 6-man on this one. It will cost you a little bit in the bullpen. That's the one thing about 6-mans is, like, you have to really manage the bullpen. But if you've got guys with some options that don't really, that bullpen is veteran. Yikes! Look at that. There's ways to maneuver around that and make it work with the injury list and options and stuff. So, this is an interesting place for me. This is actually, this is a place where I could take Kodai Senga. If you sum it up, a 3 ERA and 285 innings over the last 2 years in the big leagues. Yeah, I want that. I know that, like, the story doesn't fit that. You're like, oh, that's what he's done? Yeah. You just have to look past the fact that he was completely lost at the end of last year.
Right. I mean, I think if he's horrible in the spring, then maybe you can start to revise those expectations. Like, if he just has no sign of being back on track. But I think right now, sight unseen, I'm in at this price, because it's hard to find that much strikeout potential without really having any innings caps. It's just more of like, can he stay healthy aside from the effectiveness? So I think it's a dart worth throwing at this point.
There's a little
Mets pitching's all back here, dude. Like, a lot of Mets pitching's down.
Yeah. It's Freddie Peralta and a bunch of jabronis.
I know Brit's covering the Olympics in Italy, but if that didn't just like make her think about our show spontaneously, like I don't know what would. Shota Tong goes down here though too, man. 179 Ks and 113 2/3 in the minors last year. A lot of that was at AA, 162 and 102.
I just don't see him making the roster out of spring.
Well, okay, Nolan McLean's not a jabroni. It's Freddie Peralta, Nolan McLean, Sean Manaea, and a bunch of jabronis. And some of those jabronis are guys that we've liked before. So it's like, it's messy, but I was trying to decide, is Jonah Tong 8th on the depth chart? If everybody's healthy, it'd be Peralta, McLean, Manaea. David Peterson's probably ahead of him. Kodai Senga would be ahead of him. Clay Holmes is probably ahead of him, and then they got Tobias Myers back in that trading in with the Brewers, but maybe Tobias Myers is the long reliever, or maybe he's even a short reliever for them because he looked pretty good out of the pen late last year for the Brewers.
Yeah. Let me just look real quick. He has one option. He could be the guy that like sort of up and down makes it all work. So I don't know that he's the guy that takes a spot for himself. David Peterson, he's almost exactly average for his career. 4.12 ERA, 4.14 SIERA, 23% strikeout rate, 10% walk rate for his career. League average last year was 4.16 ERA, 4.06 SIERA, 22.2% strikeout rate, 8.5% walk rate. He's almost exactly average in every category except 3.70 ERA at home. He's useful there. And then also just a history of tumult is what I wrote down. Tumult.
History of tumult.
I mean, he's had hasn't he? He's had great half seasons and then been where did David Peterson go? So I think he's a draft and hold play. Tong is more of a, hey, I'm going to take him in my last pick and see if he makes a team play. And I still like Tong in keeper leagues because they're going to sort through some of these veterans and some of these guys are going to get hurt and so on and so forth. But in this tier, I like Jose Soriano still. I don't know. Soriano last year had a fine season, and nobody still likes him. I mean, Soriano last year was the 134th best starter. That's not that great. This is where he's going right now. I still think when you look at Soriano, he has a good stuff plus number on the slider and the splitter. He just can't command them. So if he ever could find the feel on those two pitches, he could be a 4-pitch pitcher with velo and extreme sink. So I think there's actually some breakout potential for Soriano. There's more interesting breakout potential for Soriano than Peterson.
Oh, yeah, by far. I mean, if I'm just gambling on someone to have way better underlying numbers going forward, Peterson's going the wrong direction. I think there's at least the shot that things click for Soriano.
Yeah. And then I guess Soriano's nice because, worst case scenario, you get 125th ranked starting pitcher, and he does the same thing he did last year where he's up and down. He's useful sometimes. Detmers is probably my favorite breakout pick down here. We're getting a lot of veterans down here, but Detmers, he had this stuff explosion going to the pen. And of course he did because the velo went up and he doesn't have to throw his third and fourth pitches and all that stuff. The weird thing was, I was looking at this, Stuff wasn't the problem before. Stuff has always liked him. The problem was lefties. He had a .430 slugging last year against lefties. It was over 500 when he was a starter at 23 and 24. And so what does he do against left-handers last year to get it down to .430? 51% sliders. It's a gyro slider. And for those people that don't know, the big sweeping, the big sliders that have big drop and big sideways, those have big platoon splits. I don't know, maybe the hitter can see them better, whatever it is. They have big movement. The little tiny fast sliders called gyro sliders, the ones that are like Jake DeGrom's 93-mile-an-hour slider, Mizarowski's, like those power sliders, those have smaller platoon splits because, I don't know, they look more like cutters. They look more like fastballs. They don't have as big movement. Detmers throws a gyro slider. And so he basically, against lefties now, is slider forward. And he had, that slider against lefties last year had a 289 slugging, 379 X slugging. And it's his best pitch in stuff plus splits, even against lefties. So I actually think this could work. I think he found something that works. The problem was lefties, not stuff. He's going to go back in the rotation now, and when he faces a lefty, he's going to fill him up with sliders.
Yeah, the Reed Detmers experience. I know the way
to try again. I have to throw myself against this wall again.
2026, back to stepping on the same rakes again after vowing to step on new rakes in 2025. It's different. It's funny the way that the RotoWire depth charts work. If you have any sort of injury, even if it's relatively small, you kind of get the out designation coming out of the offseason. The first 4 starters listed on the Angels depth chart have some sort of injury question. All of them might be absolutely fine entering camp, as we'll learn the next couple of days, but it's Kikuchi, Soriano, Detmers, and Grayson Rodriguez.
Oh, and Manoah's after him?
And then Manoa's there. And Manoea does not have that right now. So
he does not? Oh, because I guess he was pitching.
I actually like their duct tape together attempt at a rotation right now in some ways. I can see something there that gets me excited, which is
it's better than
terrifying.
Running out their homegrown guys. I mean, Kohanowitz was a bit of a disaster with like a 15% strikeout rate. Gary was no good. Even Cade and Dano was no good.
All of this just makes me worry that I'm having problems with my vision, like that I may have, I don't know, astigmatism and glaucoma simultaneously. Because I'm like looking at the Angels depth chart. I'm like, this is kind of all right. I'm kind of intrigued by this. Like, what kind of problems do I have right now? Why do I think this is going to work in some way?
It could. I mean, if 3 of them are healthy.
You know who we didn't talk about? We didn't talk about Clay Holmes a few minutes ago when we were.
Yeah, I've got that. He's lower on this list, but I did want to talk to him because he's on the biggest stuff plus droppers chart.
Well, that doesn't seem good.
No. The biggest stuff plus droppers included Zebby Matthews and Clay Holmes. But it's still okay. The sinker and slider and sweeper are still good. And the changeup had May stuff, but like good locations. And then the cutter, 88 stuff, 81 location, but it had 231 X slugging. Only 14% whiffs. The four seam was even worse. 76 stuff plus 569 X slugging. So, against lefties, he's still throwing a cutter and four seam that are pretty terrible. But I don't know. I look at Clay Holmes and say, that is somebody I want in draft and hold. I get to play him at home. Last year, he was the 60th best starting pitcher. Why is he dropping so hard? I think he's got 150 innings in him. He's been healthy most of his career. He keeps the ball on the ground. The projections are all like 390 to 410. I want Clay Holmes.
I think at the price he's fine. I don't have high expectations of getting a lot more.
No, it's more of an oatmeal play. And in fact, he kind of reminds me of it's a different sort of package, but it's a little bit similar. Jameson Taillon, Brian Bayo, Mitch Keller, they're all in this tier. And the reason they're all in this tier is draft and hold. These guys are innings. They're not exciting innings. There's some matchups you'll like. Brian Bayo I don't like because, he belongs in this tier, but Clay Holmes and Jameson Taillon I can start at home. The monthly park factors for Wrigley in April and May are great. I can at least start, Taillon to begin the year at home. David Pearson, I can start him at home. Clay Holmes, I can start him at home. Mitch Keller, I can start him at home. Brian Bayo, I don't know where to start him.
Yeah, I feel like Tyler Mahle maybe goes in this group now too, as like someone that probably doesn't have the swing and miss that he used to have in his profile, but doesn't necessarily need it to be useful at home.
Yeah, but you're also adding injury history. There's 125 innings over the last 3 years combined for Tyler Mahle. But I did want to throw this chart up real quick. This is the oatmealiest of oatmeal. This chart is oatmeal. I love it. When I came up with the idea, I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing you've ever posted. So this chart is, over the last 3 years, these pitchers have never been worth $10 in the auction calculator and had never been negative. Is that oatmeal? It seems like it.
Yeah, actually, that's interesting. So you got Reese Olson hurt right now, Colin Ray, Mitch Keller, Dean Kramer, Brian Bayo, and Zach Littell.
There you go, baby. Just got to plug them in all year and you'll get $3.
So basically, no one you would draft in a 10-team league, but guys that in 15-team draft and holds and mono leagues you actually think are a little undervalued. That's how you describe this group?
Yeah.
Gross, dude. Just
gross.
Can we give a palate cleanser before we go? I mean,
Five
Andrew
people in the
Painter,
Discord are like, yes, my people.
everybody else listening has just turned it off. But for anyone that did stick it out, I mean, Andrew Painter was on the rundown today. You think there's do you think there's a chance he was working on stuff last year at AAA?
Yeah, I saw this in the numbers. So one thing that you can see is he threw the changeup and the sinker combined 15% of the time last year. The model hates those pitches, and it brought down his overall stuff plus. And you could see a changeup and sinker might even bring down your strikeout rate, which is what happened for Painter last year. It was a 23% strikeout rate in the minor leagues. And I think a lot of people looked at the 5 ERA and the 23% strikeout rate in AAA and just said, no, that is not a top prospect anymore. And I beg to differ. It was the first time his strikeout rate went down. It was the first time his walk rate was bad. It was coming off injury. It was in AAA with the challenge system, and he was throwing this sinker and changeup. So I think he'll come to the big leagues. He'll have a framer. He'll have a different strike zone. I know that JT Realmuto is not the best framer, but I bet you he's probably better than their AAA catcher. And he won't have the ABS zone. And I think he'll turf the sinker and changeup, and he'll go four seam, cutter, slider, curve. And I think those are his excellent pitches. We've seen some real excellence from him using those pitches. So the projections aren't good, but the projections aren't really going to be good on prospects anyway. So I would say that Painter is a fun prospect still. Now, are they going to sign like Chris Bassett and bump him out of the rotation, even though they said, they want him in the rotation to begin the season? You don't know. There's still some guys out there. There's Chris Bassett is lurking.
Yeah, there's still some guys out there that are unsigned. There's still some guys out here that we haven't talked about that will be relevant in leagues. Some of them will be relevant in deep leagues right away. Some of them will be relevant even in medium-sized league or smaller leagues later on because their prospects are getting an opportunity. So what we're going to do for a future episode, I want you to use our mailbag channel in the Discord and use the tag request line. Just drop a request line for pitchers we have not talked about on the 4 pitching previews, and we'll start getting to those in upcoming mailbag segments. That way, if there's someone you're thinking about, curious about, we will cover that pitcher on an upcoming episode. Since we've covered about 100 starting pitchers over the course of these 4 episodes, that helps a lot of people. It doesn't help everyone. It wasn't turning over every stone, which is generally what we try to do with this series. It's just impossible to do with pitching without having 15 episodes, especially when you run into the start of spring training, which we're doing because we have breaking news as we go. Did you see the Francisco Lindor news?
Let me take a big drink of tea and look at the Francisco Lindor news, huh?
Francisco Lindor may be facing surgery for his hamate bone.
Yep.
He'll be reevaluated on Wednesday. And if surgery is needed, he will miss 6 weeks.
I'm guessing the surgery is going to be needed, man. It's broken.
Yeah, the good news is once that hammate's removed, it's usually not a problem anymore, right? The wrist is fine without the hamate, as you have told us a few times. Which player was that had the hammates removed?
Pablo Sandoval had
Sandoval
removed.
He's like, they're out, they're gone.
Switch hitters, they're both gone.
No more hamate problems. Got it removed. So yeah, drop us requests for any player. It doesn't have to be a pitcher that we didn't get to over the course of the previews. Maybe guys whose situations have changed over the life of the previews. We're happy to answer those questions. We're sort of back on the regular schedule. We have Jed Lowry joining us on our Wednesday episode, Trevor May joining us on Thursday, and we'll go kind of deep dive Fantasy Friday with some more fantasy strategic topics and things as well. So that is going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.